Today I'm going to work on changing the transmission fluid on this 2015 F150. It's an XLT. It's got the 5-liter engine. And what I did was I went ahead and got the Mercon LV, which is the transmission fluid for this vehicle, and a new filter which goes inside the pan, and a new gasket. The gasket's reusable, but I just feel more comfortable with a new gasket. So I got everything, and I'm just going to get started on the process now. Here I am looking at the passenger side into where the transmission is. So you can see the transmission pan, and then right towards the front of the transmission pan there's a 19mm bolt, and that is where you're gonna, that's your fill plug. So you go ahead and you pull that off, and there's a little dipstick inside that 19mm nut that will be used later throughout the process to check the fill, but you should crack the plug first, make sure you can get it off before you start undoing any of the bolts on the pan. So that's what I'm doing first, and then we'll get to taking the bolts off the pan. So you can see the pan here, and then the bolts that go all the way around. So we should be able to get in there. I'll let you know what size those bolts are. But once I crack the fill plug here, I'm actually going to try to siphon some of the fluid out so it doesn't go all over the place like I've seen in a bunch of videos already. So here's the dipstick. Like I said, it sits inside the bolt here, so these separate from each other, and you can see where my level is now, which is at the bottom of the hash marks, which is probably fine because the transmission is cold. It's about 40 degrees out right now, so that's probably okay. And then when the transmission heats up to the operating temperature, the fluid expands, and then it should end up within the hash mark area that you see on here now. So it looks like it's close to the A, but I've been holding it on a little bit of an angle. So that's what the dipstick looks like anyway. So now let me get to siphoning some of that fluid out. So what I'm going to try to do here, utilize this little drill pump that I have to be able to pump a bunch of the fluid out. So right now I've got the tube up inside the fill port all the way down to the bottom of the pan, and then once I start using this pump right here connected to the drill, which is just this type of pump, should start pulling out the fluid. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, so that way when I start taking down the pan, it's not going to spill all over the place. So I was able to get 3 quarts out with the drill pump before it started to stop pumping it out of the pan. So now that I got the 3 quarts out, it actually, doesn't look bad, and it smells fine. Doesn't have a burnt smell to it, so it was probably in decent shape. Because this is 2015, but it only has 60,000 miles on it, and I know Ford says 150,000 miles before you service your transmission, but I did want to change it before that. So everything looks good so far. Now I'm going to go ahead and start the process for dropping the pan. All right, so now I'm just going to go around and undo the bolts all around the pan, and I'm supposed to start with the bolts at the rear, so we're going to go ahead and get those first, and then we'll go ahead and work our way around towards the front and get all those off. All right, so I just want to show, here's the pan as I pulled it down and towards the front. So I went ahead and did that after I took out all the bolts, and since I did siphon out majority of the transmission fluid. No transmission fluid leaked anywhere when the pan broke free. So so that was a lot easier and a lot less messy than some of the other changes I've seen, but it just takes a little time to siphon it out. So let me just go ahead and pull down the pan and then take a look. All right, so here we go. The pan is off. I dropped the pan into this little plastic tub I had. There's probably about, I don't know, half a quart or so in there. I guess I spoke a little too soon, because as soon as I pulled the pan away, it did start to spill out, and I didn't have the plastic bucket in the right spot, so I did get some on the canvas here, but that's what it's for. So so I'm just gonna go ahead and take this out. So for me, the pan and the filter, the filter dropped right into the pan. When the pan dropped, the gasket isn't on here, so that's still up on the transmission, so I'll have to make sure I pull that off too. But you can see here the little magnets. So there's 2 magnets, and they should have little metal debris on there, which is normal. No major chips or large pieces of metal, so that's good. So what I'll do is I'll dump this out, I'll get the filter out of the way, and then just clean up around the edges here. You can see where the old gasket was. So the gasket is on the inside of the pan, so just got to make sure the inside here is nice and clean, and that way when your new gasket goes on there, it seals well. So let me go ahead and clean up the pan, pull off the old gasket, and then see what we got going on next. All right, so I pulled the one magnet off and just wiped it down. You can see all that black nasty stuff that was on the magnet. Now I'm just gonna grab some brake parts cleaner and go ahead and spray it off, and then I'll wipe it off again, and then flip it over, clean it up on this side, wipe it down, and then make sure I wipe down the outside edges and inside edges, and then I'll do the same for this one right here, and then clean out the pan. All right, so I went ahead and cleaned up the pan, put both the magnets back. This magnet just kind of hangs out here. I double checked the video from that I just took before when I was taking it off to make sure it was in the right spot, and it does just kind of hang out right here on this side. So I'm just gonna put it back in the same spot, and then like I said, I cleaned up the edges. This is where the gasket sits on the inside. On the outside, where there's some oxidation here, you don't have to clean that up because the gasket isn't sitting there. The gasket is really riding on the seal on the inside, so that's where you want to clean it up if there's anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean up underneath where this mates to the transmission as well, just along the edge, similar to what I did here. And then I think I can probably go ahead and put the filter in, and then bolt up the new gasket with the pan. Just wanted to throw in a quick share that the number here on this filter, which is one of the Ford Motor Company filters, I did get a new filter, and that number matches exactly what's on this filter. So just to make sure I got the right one and the same one. So here's the new one, Here's the old one, and now let's clean up the pan, clean up the magnets, and get the gasket off like I said before. So just sharing a quick shot with the gasket off and the pan off. So what I did was I went around here, and again the gasket sits on the inside of the bolts here, so just make sure with a little brake clean on a clean towel, lint-free kind of cloth, that you go ahead and clean all around the edges, and then you should be all set to get the new gasket on there and the new pan on there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab both of those things. But before we do that, we do have to put the filter in. So let me just share. There is the hole that the filter is going to go into. So we're just going to make sure that we put a little transmission fluid on the seal that goes around the filter, and then we'll pop it up in there. All right, so I got the new filter out. Here it is. I'm just gonna, I don't know if that's gonna reach, but yeah, there we go. Just gonna put some transmission fluid around that seal. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take that and install it. All right, so here we are, quick picture with the filter installed. Again, just push it up and it pops right into that seal, into the hole. So, and then it just kind of hangs there, so you'll be able to put the pan up against it, and then it'll be in the right position once the pan is bolted in. So let me grab the gasket and the pan and get to that. All right, so I went ahead and put the pan back with just one bolt up here in the front, and then one bolt over here towards the back. And now I'll just go ahead and make sure I get all the bolts in, but you can see the gasket here, and then the pan, and then you can see through to the pan hole lining up with the gasket hole, which is lining up to the threaded hole in the transmission. So I'll just go ahead and go around, hand tighten all those, and then I'm going to go ahead and take out a little 1/4 inch torque wrench and make sure I torque them to the spec. All right, so now I got them all hand tightened in there. The pan is pretty much where it needs to be, so I'm going to have to go ahead and get the torque wrench out and check the torque spec. So the gasket came with directions, which has the torque spec in. I'll get to that in a minute. I just did want to share, so there was one of these bolts, which you'll see right here on the passenger driver side, that I had to use a box wrench for. So you can see that heat shield there. That heat shield was getting in the way, and I couldn't get my 8mm standard size socket on there, so I had to use a box wrench to be able to get that off and get that on. So not going to be able to get that one to the right torque spec with the torque wrench, but I'll be able to torque it down with the box wrench, which will be just fine. So here's the instructions that came with the gasket. And since what I have is a 2015, so I'm going to go ahead and use 2014 and forward models, tightening to 80 inch-pounds. So I've got a torque wrench right here. I'll just set it to 80 inch-pounds, and then it says make sure you go ahead and torque in a crisscross pattern. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll do one on this side, one on that side, one on this side, and just go down the line in that direction. So I'm gonna go ahead and start. All right, so now that we got the pan on and all torqued down, I'm gonna try to use this little pump here to pump the fluid in. So here's one of the quarts, and I'm gonna get about 4.5 quarts or so into the pan, and then start the process of turning the truck on and then cycling it through the gears. So let me see if this pump starts working, and I could get about 4 to 4.5 quarts in. All right, so that crappy little pump that I was using that had the battery stopped working, so I went ahead and switched over to this other one I've got, which fits right on here, and I just push down and then it'll pump it in. So I'll just finish up the 4.5 quarts that way. All right, so now I'm inside the truck, and what I'm trying to do here is, after I pumped in 4.5 quarts, what you have to do is, with the fill plug still off, go ahead and foot on the brake, start the truck, and then you gotta just go through each one of the gears. So reverse, couple seconds, neutral, couple seconds, drive, manual, 2, 1, and then back to park, and then shut it off. So now what I can do is go down underneath and then check the level with the dipstick. So that should have cycled through all the gears, filled up the transmission filter, and then taken some of the fluid up through the system. So now I can check it again, see where it is on the dipstick. And it is cold, so it'll be at the low end on the dipstick. So that's the best place for it to be, just like when I originally pulled it out and checked it and showed you. So I'm gonna head under, take a look at where I am with the dipstick. All right, so what I got here is the dipstick. I just kind of dropped it in. So what you gotta do is make sure it sits all the way in. So just give it a little twist. And of course, be careful, because right here is your catalytic converter. Even though the car was only on for 30 seconds cycling through the gears, that thing gets pretty hot. So dipstick is in. So now I'm just gonna pull it out, and I'm gonna take a look at where the reading is, and I wanna be at the bottom of the hash mark, because it is really considered cold still, the transmission fluid. So you got it up and out, and looks like we are in the hash mark for the A, which is where we want to be, because then when it heats up, it should be closer to the B. So I'm just going to wipe it clean and check it again, make sure that that is where it is, and then if it is, then I can go ahead and put the plug on and then just give it a test drive. Right now I don't see any new fluid around the pan, so the pan's sealed up good. So let me go ahead and put the drain plug on if everything is good, and then give it a test drive, and then I should be all set. So that's it. Hopefully it was helpful, and you can go ahead and do it on your own.